Hello and welcome to Everyone Has a Story podcast. I'm going to start off talking about my childhood. When I was born, my dad was in his 50s. He had a group of guys, probably 10, 12, 15 guys that were his age or older. So I had the lucky opportunity to having somewhere between 10 and 15 grandpas. And one thing that these grandpas did for me was they kept me on the straight and narrow on certain things that I needed to know as I grew up and as I became an adult. Lesson number one was they always told me to wake up every day and be purposely intentful on learning something brand new every day. Always be curious. The other thing they said to me was, please always be in the present. As a young man, you probably have no idea what that means, but as you grow, you're going to start to have a lot of things running through your head. And it's going to be very easy for you to be standing there having a conversation with someone, being at an event, and not fully being there with mind and body. And so you really have to be disciplined to do that. And so from a very, very young age, I was really told the importance of mindfulness, even though that term probably wasn't even used back 50 years ago. But the fact of the matter is they always remind me of being mindful of the things that are important, maybe not right then and there. And of course, as a young man, I tried to prove them wrong, right? But in the long run, I'm now 64, and I can tell you that every moment that I have that I can remember with all of my stories is really because of those guys and my dad. And so today we're going to be talking about mindfulness because today it seems like in the world of business and the world of leadership, mindfulness just seems to be something that no one even talks about anymore. And it needs to be brought back into our daily activities and just ideas when we wake up every morning. So with me today, I'm going to have my guest speaker, Will Schneider. So Will, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Roger. It's good to be here.
So Will is the founder of Will Not Fear. Got to love the name, right? But he's also the co-host of another podcast called Men Talk and Mindfulness. And that's really what we're going to focus on today is really being mindful with our actions, our thoughts, and just with who we are. So with that being said, Will, why don't you give yourself a little bit deeper introduction to who you are and what brought you here today?
Well, I'm here today because of your wonderful invite. So thank you for that. I'm always looking to spread more of the message of mindfulness and meditation and all the wonderful things that science is continually discovering as we understand and bring more mindfulness to more companies, to more people, to more communities. So it's very rewarding in that way to be a teacher on kind of the forefront of this mindfulness movement, if you will. I've been, just before the show we're talking, like I've been in New York City for 20 years. What brought me here is acting. I moved here in 2003, having never really explored like a creative life before. Like I kind of grew up with a lot of men around me as well. And I happen to be a really, being gifted with a good, strong and able and agile and quick body. So I was like quite the athlete growing all the way up and all the way through college. And, that's where a lot of my time was spent. That when I wasn't like studying or hanging out with my friends, I was always like doing something athletically, which I really, it's made me in a lot of ways who I am today. And made me a lot of the teacher that I am today, because I didn't like some of the coaches that I had in the past. And I was like, I'm not going to be like them. And I've been meditating since 2007. I started, with transcendental meditation, and a lot has changed in my meditation practice. I would say that I'm definitely go through the Buddhist lineage of Vipassana meditation. We can talk about this during the show. I've done 3 Vipassana retreats, which are 10 days in complete silence and 10 hours of meditation a day and 1 hour for every single meditation throughout the day. And that has had a profound effect on me. I don't have a family yet, but that's something I'm working on now, to put that in place. And, I've just really been blessed as a yoga teacher here also in the city. I ended up getting certified in yoga in 2009, um, taking up the practice, 2006 or seven, like right around the time that meditation came along. I started diving a little bit deeper into physical awareness through the asana practice, which is just a part of yoga. A lot of people think of yoga and only think about like doing these different poses, where there's like, there's eight, it's an eightfold path. And the other seven are all about like understanding your mind, being a good citizen, getting to know your breath, meditation and understanding yourself in a deep and meaningful way, but also like understanding that there's some sort of divine odd connection that's a part of all of us. And the last several years I've been pre-pandemic, I was like really working to bring mindfulness practices to more and more companies, and I was successful at that. The pandemic hit, and a lot of people were struggling immensely with what to do with being at home, not being in the regular routine, and just kind of, I think I heard at that time when the pandemic hit, I'm going to butcher this quote by Pascal, but something along the lines of like, the world will change, or man or human beings will change when they discover the ability to sit quietly in a room alone. And so the pandemic hit, and I just started to get busier, teaching more virtual meditations, dropping in and teaching, even just 30-40 minute sessions of like movement and breathing and meditation at different companies. And John and I started a podcast into 2020, I think in May sometime in 2020. And, John comes from such an interesting background because he's a 17 or 16 year Navy SEAL. I was considered on the show like the hippie from New York City. And we've just had a real blast, unpacking mindfulness, not just for men, but like being two men. It's like, how else are we going to unpack it? We're two men. So we've had a pretty profound impact in that community at this point, and it's growing slowly. And it's nice to live a purposeful and passionate life, because this is what I do all the time. And I have private students and stuff that I work with, and hosting different events, and I have a retreat coming up in September, this month and next week in Durango, Colorado. And it's just kind of my story. Like I grew up, I grew up in Pennsylvania, the Northeast, in the Poconos. Very strong family ties. Still, my parents, I'm very grateful they're still with me. They've been married like 55 years, but my last name is Schneider, and we have like a very large extended family that I have the opportunity and luck to spend time with every year when we have our family reunion that's going on 75 straight years. And being around that many people all the time, growing up with like, I had a lot of men in my circles when I was growing up, like a lot of boys, like, around my neighborhood where I grew up, a lot of, boys in my family, my extended family are always hanging out, always hiking, always riding bikes, always playing outside, playing basketball, always doing some fun stuff. And it's just, I think that's really helped me just to be able to go out on my own in New York City and pursue what I love and want to do. Because just something about them having my back, if you will. And that's kind of been, how I got to where I am today in some ways.
Nice. Well, thank you for being here. So let's talk
Roger.
mindfulness. I don't know
Sure.
if anybody has or uses the same definition for mindfulness. It can go a lot of different directions. What is your definition of mindfulness?
Well, my definition is just being aware and being present in the moment, non-judgmentally, just living moment to moment. And it's really that awareness piece. It starts with that. Just, I have a young niece right now, or I'm actually a great uncle, and it's amazing to see her become more aware of her body at this point. She's only like 11 weeks old, and that's kind of how simple this practice can be. Just being mindful of your body, being mindful of your breath, being mindful of your emotions, being mindful of the words that you speak, how present or not present you are in the conversation, how well you're listening. it's just it helps on so many different levels when you really begin to practice and really understand first, but then begin to take on the practice of mindfulness, because it just has a tremendous impact on the human condition.
Yeah, it does. And like I said, it's made a big difference in my life. So why is this really your passion today?
Uh, it's uh, it's a really good question. Like, I just want to see more peace in the world, and that peace isn't attained by gathering more things or creating more wealth, or or even like traveling to all different sorts of places. It's like there's an internal environment that if you choose to create it, whoever you are that's listening, but you have to practice to get there. You'll be able to find that peace, and with that peace comes more joy, comes more gratitude, comes more appreciation. You become kinder, more compassionate, um, and really tap into how we're wired as human beings, which is to connect. And if you have the more meaningful connection, you have more meaningful connection to yourself, you're going to have more meaningful connections with other people that are out there, and understanding them in a more meaningful way, instead of just as a transaction, if you will.
So why do we need that today? I know you focus more on men, but why do we as individuals need that more today than probably in our past?
Well, we're so just distracted. I mean, technology is really starting to take over. And I think it's interesting that we really haven't had a say in that. We've just been kind of continually pushed into, faster, bigger, or just, faster, more efficient, all these manipulative algorithms that want us to believe this and that, and really messes with our core belief of who we are, even if we know who we are. And a lot of people don't. I'm really kind of fearful of the, I live in New York City, so there's millions of people around, and I see thousands of people every day, and it's really disheartening to see young kids. I'm talking 4 or 5, sitting in their stroller, looking at a screen. What is that like? So I guess I've just become more fervent in this pursuit of helping more people, because I don't know if we'll make it, without beginning to realize that we're not our technology. We're not like just the income that we continually generate. We're not like our like this perfectly procured, like amazing looking Instagram or Facebook feed that we put out there. We're not all of these things that the marketplace drives us to in order for them to make more profits. Um, and we're it's very important to for everyone to just even just start to find your breath, and not even meditate, just to get to know your breath a little bit, which is a great place to start with your mindfulness. And understanding that, I think because we're so jacked up with technology, and the fears that it creates, like these deep moral fears of like, I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or whatever it is, I'm not rich enough, I'm not smart enough. These just, they're not who we are. Like, and I think in order to get to know who you are, you have to stop, you have to pause, you have to get into the non-doing, uh, which is just as important as anything you want to do. And we never take time to pause, and it just creates more stress, more anxiety, and our societies and our businesses are driven by stress and anxiety. And it's like, and it's been proven, physiologically, that we don't make our best choices when we're jacked up on stress and anxiety. We just don't. We don't have clarity. It impacts our brain. It hijacks, something, a very important part of our brain that really makes us human beings, is our neocortex. And that has the executive function in it. And if we really begin access, and mindfulness will help you do that, meditation and breathing and all the things we'll kind of flesh out through our conversation here, Roger, it'll help you to get away from all that stress, get into, the unbelievable capability that we have in our mind, to be an awesome person and to make awesome choices, and not just thinking of yourself, but thinking of other people at the same time.
I love that. So now let's go to my niche, which is the business community,
Yeah.
which is made up of just millions and millions of individuals. We're all humans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so how can this now be applied mindfulness, how can it be applied to the business community to help get over what's going on right now with the business community where employees don't want to go back to work? They
Mm.
don't really know what they want to do in life. And so I go to my favorite restaurant. I can't go at certain times now because they can't find enough help to stay open late at night, or they're opening up later in the day than what they normally do. Just seems like business in general is just struggling, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But we're here talking about mindfulness. But how can mindfulness be applied to the business community to really help them more in the present, be more mindful of who they are as individuals, who their employees are as individuals, and who their customers are as individuals?
Yeah, and I'll also add how they can be collectively. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it is a company, it is a corporation, and I think one of the first thing, there's many different ways we can kind of attack this, and one thing I'll talk about is like the stress culture that exists in a lot of companies, and I call it stress culture because it's a lot of. I had the opportunity to work with I'll tell a story, Roger. I had an opportunity to work with a public relations company here in the city and actually just with one of their teams. I mean, it's like a large company. I don't know how many, like 4 or 5, not, I mean, small, mid-size, like 4, 5, 600 employees. I work with their crisis management team. And, their leader at this company was, I think smart enough, I'll say, in order to like look in the angle, as actually his wife was in my class in yoga, and she was like, "Hey, you're gonna need to hang out with Will, or you need to study with Will and see what he's doing." And then it rolled into me working with his team at this crisis management part of the PR firm. So they would get like if a company screws up like really, really bad, like they get the phone call in the middle of the night. So a lot of their employees are used to being on 24/7 because we don't know when those phone calls are going to happen. So we had worked. I went in and just started teaching them some very simple techniques, but making them understand. I don't think that people understand what I spoke about earlier, Roger, is how stress and the stress hormones, how it really puts us in a very shitty way of being a human being. It puts us in crisis mode, right? We're easily defensive, easily frustrated, and then from this defensive and frustrated place, we might attack other people. We don't listen, and we literally, like, our hearing begins to diminish, right? When we're in like really like even mild or heightened states, we're just always trying to rush to the next. And a lot of the stress culture, and and a lot of companies that I've read about, hear about, and I've worked with, it's just like this kind of dog eat dog community, and there's no place to work, and a lot of that is driven by stress and anxiety, and by people understanding what stress does to the body. um, I think that I use that as an on ramp to teach them what it's like to release from stress. So just by simply breathing, meditating, and moving a little bit. I mean, I talk a lot about movement, not just from a yoga perspective. I think it's intimidating for yoga, to be in a corporation, people in stretch pants and yoga and moving around. And it's like, but just to take some very simple practices off the yoga mat and into the conference room where we can all thrive and we can all breathe. We can all do the best we can to focus on meditation. We all do some simple movements that'll help to, allow the body to kind of re-energize and refocus and bring some more hydration in the body as well. So I think it's like a great place to start is understanding what stress does, but also, realizing what you can do about it. And once you realize you can do something about it, and you do something and you do it collectively as a group, and I really worked with this team to start their meetings off by just doing some breathing, just for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So it actually, what I love, like from the collective standpoint, just because we're all doing something together, which brings a vibe and an energy and a sense of camaraderie. And the breathing naturally begins to calm us all down. So therefore our mind opens, our ears open, and therefore we're in this executive function where we can really, be at our A game. And I think that's where I would start with a company. But it takes practice. It's not just, me dropping in and doing a 4-hour workshop or working with you for a couple of days. It's like, it's the consistency that is required in order for this to begin to materialize in your meetings, in your, with the individual, being aware of their stress and their habits, even at the office, and then taking it a step further and, adding some more practices or learning new things about mindfulness.
So my community, the business community,
Yeah,
they're always looking at the ROI. It's like it's
absolutely.
that stamp of approval that I have the right ROI.
Yeah.
So give us an idea of really what the return on investment is by taking these steps that you've mentioned earlier about being more mindful with the breath, with your thought, just being present.
Yeah.
What kind of return is that going to bring to that organization and to that business owner?
Yes. Well, first I'll go in the other direction. By not having these practices in the workplace, there's more sick days that are taken, so more time lost. When you're living in like a stress culture, the likelihood of like redoing your work over because you messed it up the first time is going to cost you time, is going to cost you money. You don't have the most focused, the most creative, the most collaborative employee, right? So you're not making the best decisions, and that's going to have a big impact on the bottom line. And it's just like they say, like 70% of all hospital related injury or people go to the hospital is 70% of them there is a stress cause in there in some way. So if you begin to, but then on the flip side, by working, in the way that I kind of spoke of earlier, to recognize stress, understand stress, and begin to release from that stress culture. And I think what I'll also add is, how do you relate to your technology as a group? You're on call all the time. Is it like, do you have a 6 p.m. shut off where you can actually be with your family? You're expected to, right, when someone sends an email 10 p.m., you have to reply right away. I mean, there's a so there's a massive ROI that many companies have shown over the last decade or more by bringing these practices to the workplace, and it'll just and also creates a more team-oriented environment. It really creates more of a community instead of everyone just trying to collect their paycheck, stay under the radar, and don't take any risks because you're scared of being belittled or berated or and that's where really, innovation occurs, is by taking that risk and having the willingness to take a risk. But you have to create that environment in order to take risks. So I don't. It depends on the size of the company, the actual number, but it's been a significant impact, like more than 30-40%. That you can have, like, by just investing, return investment. So you bring somebody in like me, maybe like $15,000 or $20,000 for the year or more or something like that to work with your team. You'll see that, my God, I can't even, it's tough to measure, but it would be like tenfold. It could be, depending on what kind of work you do and how you do things.
Well, and it is tough to put a measurement on, but someone's less stress with better health, that's important. And if you're
Yeah.
if you're a business owner, I'm hoping that you do care about the well-being of your staff. But at the same time, I know that you can't fill someone else's cup if your cup's not full as well.
Yeah.
And so it starts with you. But then in
Yeah.
the long run, I know, especially because I've lived in Long Island, I visited, the city on more
Mm-hmm.
than one occasion.
Yeah.
And darn well when you walk into some businesses, you just don't want to be there. You just don't want to be there. You can just feel the tension. You can just feel the
Right.
unhappiness from the staff. The first words out of their mouth, you can just tell they're just not in a good place. And it just takes the whole fun of being there just out of the equation immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, the customer is going to feel it probably as much, if not more, than what the employees do. So now
Right.
everybody wins. The business owner is happy. The managers are happy. employees are happy, which means that the customers are going to be happy. And now you've got a good environment because now when you're walking around the streets in downtown New York City, which is
Hmm.
never one of the most positive places to be when you're walking around, at least you got more smiles and probably more eye contact than you'll ever have, which is a good thing in life.
Yeah, for sure. It's like it just transforms the soul of the individual if you continue to practice. And what's at the source, what's at the soul, is that kindness, is the compassion, is the willingness to help, is a greater willingness to listen, not be combative and all those things that stress kind of does. Like it literally puts us in. I have this one book. Oh yeah, had this great Reinventing Masculinity, and he talks about like confined masculinity, and that's like, I guess we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it's like we're always in this defensive crouch, right, ready to strike, or always feel like we're backed in a corner, and it's how do you get anything done? Like, how do you get anything done effectively? And then how do you and I think it really, Roger, as I was kind of going through your questions and it really starts at the leadership level. If you have a really like that guy, at this public relations company, he was a really good guy. I mean, he was a really, really good guy, and he really cared about his employees. And I knew as soon as I met him, and I went in the office and met him, and not even over the phone. I was like, I'm going to come in, we're going to talk. And right away I sat down with him, and I was like, wow. And he's a big dude too. He was like 6'6", like, big dude. And he couldn't have been, you can see that he wanted to transform his team in a way that wasn't like, some new, whatever office hack or something like that, but in a meaningful way that would transform the whole group. And they were willing to go along for that ride, because it is a ride. I mean, you're going to have to really, in order to get to the parts of mindfulness when they really become very fulfilling and really start working for you, have to go, kind of wrestle some of your demons first. People don't want to do that, but that's the work, and we have to battle the old ways of doing things, our old habits and how we do things, in order to get to something new. So I don't know if sorry, I got lost on a little tangent there, but
No, it's all right. Now you have a podcast,
mm-hmm.
Mindfulness for Men. Now,
Yeah.
do you find that men need this now more than female, or is it just because that's just the name of your podcast?
Yeah, now more than ever. You're saying is that yeah. They do. I mean, it's. I think there's always been a need. I think we've become. I don't know when we kind of have woken up and realized that the way we've been as men, the way we organize as men, the way we treat each other as men, is just it's destructive. It's very destructive. And now if you look at the suicide rates in this country, it's the suicide rates. Men are 3.6 times more likely to commit suicide than women. The veteran community right now has a suicide rate, which is mostly men, of 22 people a day. Are veterans that have been out there looking out and protecting our country and serving our country. And I was trying to think, like, I don't know if there has been an assessment of why men are really struggling so much right now, but I think a lot of it is this. I don't know. We're really shifting out of these typical masculine roles in a lot of ways, and men are just lost. If they're not the breadwinner, or they're not the leader in some ways, and even leadership has changed tremendously. Like, you have to be a better communicator than you have before, because a lot of people are in the office, and it takes a lot of soft skills, and mindfulness will help you is soft skills, but it'll help you find and begin to incorporate more of those soft skills that are required to be a better communicator and more compassionate and kind communicator. And it's like, it's really hard for men, because, I grew up with, I'll look at my notes here. Like, I grew up with, be tough, stay tough, don't be a sissy, man up, don't talk about your feelings, that have an ignorant pride, no apologies, always be right, never admit that you're wrong. And I see that so much today still, still today. I happen to be in the city, so it's more progressive, and there's, and I guess men we're more willing to talk about our feelings, which is a big thing for men. Um, but I've done men's work for a while, and where it really starts, and where it starts, and where men struggle the most are asking for help. Just admitting that they're not feeling great, that life at this point, when they have this epiphany, if they do, could be better, and then it's either willingness or unwillingness to ask for help, get the help, and start to change. Um, and it just, and I think it's also, we're realizing that the way that we've been organizing as men for so long has been passed down, seems like, for centuries. I don't know. And it's not just America, not just the United States. Everywhere, men act in this way, which is very strange. But we're realizing that, I think, as the world is changing, and we realize that we need to change our beliefs as men, and with all that ignorant stuff I just kind of mentioned, all this be tough and stay tough kind of stuff, it doesn't work. It creates a horrible environment around you. You're very difficult to work with. It's not going to create the success that you want in your life. You can be in a certain industry and just like financially just crush other people and win. But at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're drinking, you're smoking weed, you're doing coke, like, in order to numb the fact that you're sacrificing your soul in order to just make more money, and you're screwing people over in the process of doing it. Like, that sits heavy on the soul, and that could lead to more of these suicides, lead to more of abuse, in any, whatever it is. And I think it's just like the gig is up. Like, this hasn't been working for men at all. And I think it's funny, like, I'm a Gen, I'll be 50 later this year, in December. And I think it's like, this generation is like my generation, Gen X, is like, it's kind of the last generation of, like, I think at a majority, hold these values that I mentioned about being tough. And I think it's like, and then we're getting, like, the millennial generation has definitely softened a little bit in right ways. And it's just kind of slowly we're waking up. I think it's also because of the hyper information we have from the internet. Like, we just have more stuff to read and more stuff to know, and so quickly that it's just like, we're wondering, like, wow, why am I like this when I can be like that? So I think there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. Well, Will, I can't thank you enough for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. And from a man to a man, it's just good to hear this kind of stuff to let us know that, we don't have to be alone out here. There is support that we can get. There's new daily habits that we can participate in to really help us move us a little bit better each day, step by step, as opposed to thinking that it's either we have to jump all in or we don't go in at all, type thing.
Yeah.
Will, give us some final words of encouragement before we sign off.
Sure. I think, well, I know that this mindfulness and meditation, these practices are not as intimidating as you might think that they are. Because some people, it's just like, oh, I need to add something to my plate, or I need to do this now. I didn't do that. And as far as the ROI on practicing, even if you just sit, anybody that's listening to this, if you just sit, and I have, like, meditations and stuff you can do with this, or just breathing meditation. If you just sit and learn how incredibly profound the breath is to your psychology and physiology, and you sit and do that for, like, the next couple weeks, just sit and breathe and get in touch with your breath for 5 minutes, and maybe even take a bigger breaths and deeper breaths. You watch how all that stress starts to diminish and go away. And then from that place of finding more of that peace, you'll be able to create more clarity, so you can look in a new direction and maybe take another step into being more mindful. Whether that's maybe, you've been sacrificing your body during the pandemic for the last couple of years and you put on some weight, just going out and simply walking a little bit every day, or like a lot, maybe, several miles every day, or maybe a couple times a day, is going to make a difference in your life. So it's just one thing. You start with one thing. You want to change. Nothing changes until something happens, is what Albert Einstein says. So what is going to change for you? And if it's nothing, then you're just going to keep producing the same results. But mindfulness and meditation and the breathing practices are incredibly profound. And I really appreciate having this opportunity to talk about this today, Roger. And anybody that's out there, you can find me on Men Talking Mindfulness podcast or mentalkingmindfulness.com, and my own personal practices are willnotfear.com. And I'd love to help you. And I'm going to be starting this fall virtual meditation circles. You can just drop in. We're going to breathe, meditate, half hour in, out, and just to get to know yourself on a deeper level. So,
well, this is great stuff. And all you men out there, don't be too much of an ego monger. Just get out there and help yourself, and check that ego in at the door, and take Will up on this offer. Will, thank you very much.
Roger, I appreciate your time. Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. Appreciate it.
My podcast wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for my sponsors and my great supporters. So let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of them. First of all, I want to thank Rebecca at Custom Bookkeeping and Accounting, delivering trustworthy bookkeeping services since 2003. Dave and Dara at Virtues Matter, making this world a much happier place to be with their Virtues card apps, coaching, and workshops. Stephen at Buller Accounting, giving business owners depth and insight to their numbers. Eric and his team at Ivy Cat Web Design, the real superheroes of web development and design. Jennifer and Jean at the Seavers Real Estate Team, serving Pierce and Kitsap counties with their home buying and selling needs. Maury at the Maury Method, the world's only brainwave entrainment engineer, helping everyone have more clarity, less stress, and overall better brain health. Priya at Pivot My Profit, helping individuals and businesses have better control of their finances and more money at the end of their day. Melissa at the Soul Vibe Energy High, the queen of the aha moments, helping individuals find those holes in their cups, repair the hole, and gain back their positive energy. And finally, Rick at West Sound Recording. You talk, they do all the rest. Thank you, Rick, for all your efforts with the production and editing of my podcast.